I'm seeing people taking down abandoned houses so it can be safer and nicer down here.
You're standing on a street corner in Detroit. Around you are rows of abandoned houses, crumbling factories, and empty lots where neighborhoods once thrived. It feels like a ghost town, eerily quiet, almost post-apocalyptic. But just 70 years ago, this same city was one of the richest, most vibrant places in America. In fact, at its peak in 1950, Detroit had nearly 2 million residents, making it the fourth largest city in the United States. So how did such a powerhouse collapse so completely? Before we dive deep, I ask you to hit the subscriber button, which motivates me to make videos for you like this. Let's dive in. To understand why Detroit fell so hard, you first need to know how high it soared. In the early 20th century, Detroit wasn't just another American city, it was the industrial hub of the nation. Thanks to Henry Ford's revolutionary assembly line, which made cars affordable for the average worker, Detroit became synonymous with innovation and prosperity. By the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, Detroit was churning out automobiles faster than any place on Earth. Companies like General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler weren't just employers, they were symbols of the American dream. For decades, people flocked to Detroit from all over the country, and even the world, to chase opportunity. From 1910 to 1930 alone, the population exploded from 465,000 to 1.5 million. That's growth on steroids! Picture bustling streets filled with factory workers heading home after their shifts, families moving into newly built homes, and entrepreneurs opening shops along Woodward Avenue. This was the golden age of Detroit, a time when the city felt unstoppable. But here's the thing about booms. They often mask underlying cracks. And in Detroit's case, those cracks would eventually bring the entire foundation crashing down. By the late 1960s, Detroit's fortunes began to change. Between 1950 and 1960, Detroit lost over 179,000 residents, a staggering number for that era. What happened? Several factors converged to create a perfect storm. First, there was the rise of suburbanization. As highways expanded and cars became more accessible, middle-class families started leaving the crowded, aging inner city for spacious suburbs. These suburbs offered better schools, safer neighborhoods, and newer housing, all things Detroit struggled to provide. Second, globalization hit hard. By the 1970s, foreign automakers like Toyota and Volkswagen were producing cheaper, fuel-efficient cars that undercut Detroit's dominance. At the same time, labor unions negotiated increasingly expensive contracts, squeezing profits for U.S. automakers. Suddenly, the very industry that had built Detroit was struggling to keep up. And then came the tax hikes. To fund an expanding government workforce and maintain crumbling infrastructure, Detroit raised taxes repeatedly. For businesses and homeowners already feeling squeezed by rising costs, these increases were the final straw. Many simply packed up and left. As people fled, Detroit's problems multiplied. With fewer taxpayers contributing to the city's coffers, essential services like policing, firefighting, and garbage collection deteriorated. Crime rates skyrocketed, and by the 1970s, Detroit earned the grim title of murder capital of the United States. Violence wasn't the only issue. Entire neighborhoods were abandoned as property values plummeted. Vacant buildings became magnets for arsonists. In 1984 alone, firefighters responded to over 800 suspicious fires, many set deliberately. One former mayor famously described the city as a vision from hell. Can you imagine living in a place where flames lit up the night sky almost every evening? Detroit's population had shrunk to less than half its peak size. Large swaths of the city resembled a war zone, with block after block of boarded-up homes and empty lots. At one point, entire city blocks were selling for as little as $500, cheaper than a single month's rent in San Francisco or New York City. Detroit's story is heartbreaking but also inspiring. It reminds us that even the mightiest cities can falter, but they can also rise again. The key lies in learning from past mistakes and creating environments where people want to live, work, and thrive. Thanks for watching.